Everybody, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I'm laughing because I'm happy. But second of all, Bob is here. And if when you see this on your screen, you'll know what I'm talking about. I just think is the coolest, most creative thing I've seen in so long. A gentleman who's been in podcasting and online radio and everything for years has dropped by. He looks like a little blue cat with blinking eyes. He's sitting behind a desk with a black microphone, and is a cartoon of of Bob is here with me, and I'm having the best time of my life. I feel like I'm 7 years old again. But Bob's here. Bob, welcome to
Yeah,
the How to Podcast series.
you get to talk to the Saturday morning cartoon. That's what this
This
is all
is
about here. So you can say, hey, what's going on?
and Bob
What was
and
your
it,
favorite? What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
oh, I used to watch a thing called G-Force, which was like
G-Force.
back in the
Yes,
day. You know what that is? All
I
right.
do. I do know G-Force. G-Force is a Japanese cartoon, but they brought it over
Yes.
to the States and to Canada, obviously.
Right.
And I used to watch G-Force many years ago. I always found I enjoyed watching it, but then later in life, I'm like, some of these episodes don't make a lot of sense. That was my thing.
Yeah. Right.
Because I think there was more to it that they took out for the North American market that was in it in Japan. I'm assuming because it seemed like it was a little incomplete sometimes.
Yeah. Now, okay, Bob, for those who are listening right now, I'm going to
Yeah.
try to put a picture up or something so they can see what's going on here. We'll have a link to your stuff online because you got
Good.
to go. If you're listening to this, you got to go check out what Bob is doing. I'm telling you, I'm going to work my way through this chat with Bob today with this big goofy smile on my face. Um, Bob, can you explain to an audio listener what's happening with you on the screen right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Please.
You want me to give the visual? Okay.
Yeah, give me
So
an idea. Yeah.
my name is Bob, and online persona, I am a blue cat, cartoon cat, two-dimensional. I have a green shirt with some stripes on it and so forth. And I'm at my podcasting desk with a oversized microphone and some pictures in the back there that I took over my travels, which you can't hardly see very well probably there, but there are some interesting pictures back there, David.
Yes.
And it's a real time animation of me speaking. So I've got some software that I use that the camera looks at my face and maps out certain points on my face, like my mouth and my eyes and my eyebrow and my nose. And it moves along with that as I talk. So it's, you would call it an immersive experience on both sides for me and for you. So I'm an immersive cartoon.
Okay, so there's people that I talk to, Bob, and they're like, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to
Right.
get all done up. I don't want to do all that stuff.
I'm
I
not
don't want
done
to have
up.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to have to go take a shower before I get on to talk to this podcaster.
I
Um,
should, David.
okay,
Thank you.
good. That's good. I just
Yeah.
want to bring that was kind of a subtle way of asking that question. Um, is this a choice for you that you want to do podcasting like this and be on video in
Yes.
this format?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have, believe it or not, I have been doing recordings of myself as a show with my co-host Miles, uh, going on 26 years.
Wow.
So we started our show back. We did experimental shows on Thanksgiving night of 1998, and then we've done basically weekly shows since January 1st or whatever date it was that we recorded in January. I can't remember now, but January 1999. And through that time, we do a weekly show. It's a comedy show where we tell stories, and I tell a story, he tells a story, and they're all true but somewhat embellished stories, I would say. To make the whole idea is to make each other laugh, but in the process, obviously, we're wanting to make the audience laugh as well. And we've been telling stories every week for 26 years now, and we've missed a few because of various things, but I mean, it's like not even six shows out of 26 years. So
Wow.
Miles and I were on the radio when we were in college. We did a show on the radio, and essentially we graduated from college to go on to our prospective careers outside of college. Got our degrees, and back in that time, 1998, I said, "Hey, I really, we really had a lot of fun doing that radio show. Let's continue it." There's a thing called internet radio.
Yeah.
And internet radio is essentially what we can do whatever we want. Aside at the time from playing copyrighted music, because that was the days of Napster.
Yeah.
Big doings back then.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but that's not what we did, like the music and everything, but we had fun talking to each other because we would tell stories on the radio at that time as much as we could, given the format, right? So, radio stations and so forth have formats and they have rules, and you only get so many live air, not so much live air to talk. Yeah. And we like that part of it. So I'm like, well, we'll just do that. And in the world back then, our show was like, I don't know, 15 minutes, which was an incredibly long amount of audio to put on the internet back in 1999.
Yeah.
And so we started doing it. We're like, we'll just keep doing this until we don't like doing it. And we've just continued and continued. And eventually internet radio gave way to podcasting back in 2004. And I'll try to throw some interesting tidbits in. Certainly jump in, Dave, if you have a question.
No, I like this history. It's good.
I've done this before, so it's not like a news talk. But so back in 2004, I was listening to. I was a big fan of Leo Laporte on Tech TV, and I was watching Tech TV a lot. To my children's dismay, I think a lot of times they were tired of me coming home after work and watching it. But and then that was gone, and he started doing what became podcasting. He called it netcasting at the time. And I said, this is it. So we were internet radio for about 5 years at that point. Did all kinds of interesting stuff in that space. And I said, podcasting is the thing, man. We got to get onto the podcast thing. And so I stole Leo Laporte's RSS feed and figured out how to work it, and was manually coding RSS back then. I always give credit, Leo Laporte's RSS. I stole it. There's no two ways about it. And created our own RSS. And so in September 2004, we had our first podcast that was officially an RSS feed. We were part of Adam Curry's. I always say we were the first 50 podcasts, because he used to have a list of people who were doing podcasts.
Wow.
But it may have been earlier. I don't know. I can tell you that we were somewhere around the time of Soccer Girl and Keith and the Girl. There's all these girls on there. And I told Miles at the time, I said, I'm getting rid of you and getting a girl. But it didn't happen. And he stuck with me. And but whenever they came in, we were right in between them. And so then Curry kept that list. Adam Curry kept that list for quite some time. And this is something that I had never read in public until I heard it probably about 3 or 4 years ago when Adam Curry was on Joe Rogan. And I knew it happened because I was there when it happened, but it was never really voiced or written down anywhere. Adam Curry's list became part of the introduction of podcasting to iTunes, because we were in iTunes when it originated.
Wow.
So, and I didn't even know it. A fan of the show wrote me a note and said, hey, did you know you're on iTunes? I'm like, no, what's iTunes, right? So, and I go and I look and check it out, and sure enough, we were there. And I go, it had to come from Curry's list, but no one ever voiced that until I heard him mention it on Rogan a few years ago. And so between PBS shows and a few other random things, when Apple started up, it was basically about 100 or so shows on Adam Curry's list that started out in iTunes podcasting. And we've kind of just gone from there. I mean, at one point we were part of Mevio back in like 2008 ish, which was Adam Curry's podcasting network. We were on that, and that kind of, ended. It was called Pod Show originally, and then became Mevio. And so we did that for a little while, and that was probably our closest brush with being commercial, because that was a commercial type venture. And I'll be honest with you, it kind of didn't rub me the right way. It wasn't that there was anything bad about it or anything like that, but being an independent person doing all this, doing a show and putting it out there and everything, it, being in kind of more of a formal corporate kind of thing just did not work for us. And so whenever that kind of went away, I'm like, I don't think we want to jump into anything else. And so we haven't. We've pretty much been independent before and independent after that, just doing our own thing and putting stuff out there over the years. It's been fantastic in that sense. And the weird thing is, you talked about how to podcast shows, and maybe more to the point, why to podcast. And so having done this for so long, I see the benefits that I never would have seen whenever we started doing it. When we started doing it, it was like, hey, we did this did this radio thing in college. We can continue it. We're friends. We're talking. And it was a good social kind of fun thing to do. And now that it's been so many years, I basically have a audio catalog of memories from the last 26 years of my children growing up, of, strange things that happened because we usually talk about funny things or strange things, and of all these years. And, it's all been documented. It's all been put out there, and interactions with people. I know people from all over the world because of this. I have acquaintances like yourself. You're in Canada. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, which is in the United States. I know people from Australia, from Germany. I've talked to, people from all over the world. Oddly, mostly English speaking, just because I don't speak another language. But even people who don't speak English have somehow, gravitated to this little show over the years, and different points of connecting with people. I've met fans of the show in different parts. I went to New York City. I have a friend there. I consider him a friend, even though we've mostly only interacted on the internet. But I did meet him for breakfast when I was in New York City. And he has done a show since 2000. And that's how we connected. And so it's really a weird, I shouldn't say weird, because that makes people think it's not normal, but it's a very nice community building thing for people in disparate locations, because you're doing something that you enjoy, and kind of putting it together and throwing it out there, and you get overall the experience has been very, very positive. Obviously, there are some negatives to it and so forth with trolls and whatnot, but for the most part, all of my interactions with people have all been extremely positive. And it's not. I think a lot of folks now, because I look at this as the third wave of podcasting from my vantage point. The first wave was 2004 when it all started happening. The next wave was 2011, right? And that's when you had your more PBS style, serial and those kind of things kind of started catching on. And then now in 2020 during COVID, that's been the third wave. And my funny story for the third wave is my wife and I share an Apple account, and I saw a charge for a show, a podcast. I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, I bought into, and I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the name of the show now, unfortunately, but she goes, oh, I bought into the exclusive content for this show. And I go, I've been doing a podcast for quite some time. He knows. And she's like, well, yeah, but this one's much more interesting to me. And so that was when I knew that it was kind of more mainstream. She kind of ignored it as my, kind of hobby in the background kind of a situation, as opposed to being something that was more mainstream. And so when she was buying into other people's content and stuff, I'm like, okay, this means it's mainstream now. And so, now it's all kicked off. And it's just amazing, the explosion of growth for all this. But a lot of people, what I was getting to, a lot of people always think, oh, I got to get a podcast so that I can make a lot of money or something in those ideas. And I'm like, well, it's just like anything. You really need to enter it thinking that you're going to accomplish something that you want to do
Right.
and do something that you enjoy. And along the way, you're going to meet people like you, David, or
Yeah.
other people, and you're going to say, wow, that's so neat what they're doing. David does this thing with Christmas. He does this thing with dads. And it's all so fascinating. And that's really, to me, the wealth of doing a podcast is finding other people who have other interests that they're putting out there, to the world, and being a part of a community is way more valuable, I think, than anything else. I mean, yes, you can, but unfortunately, the headlines, push Rogan
Yeah.
and Adam
Right.
Carolla and all these people. It's like, but you have to remember they had a whole other career, and that career was in the media, and so now to me the negative part is the media's come to podcasting,
Yeah.
and so then now your independent folks are a little bit overshadowed by some of this stuff, but it's not totally. So don't get me wrong, it's not like it's totally overshadowed. So but you still can do whatever you want. It's media for the people, and I still think it is. And funnily enough, that's what Adam Curry talked about back in 2004. This is a level the playing field.
Right.
This is so that you and your idea can get out there just as well as MTV's, which, if people don't remember, he was an MTV VJ back
Yeah.
in the day.
Yeah.
And so it's media for the people, and that's what it's all about.
Do you think we're getting close to a fourth wave? You talked about three waves. Is there another wave just on the horizon in
Yeah.
podcasting?
So, well, part of the fourth wave is all this video stuff. To be honest with
Right.
you, podcasting is not really for the pod anymore. The reason it's called podcasting is because of the iPod,
Right.
and there really isn't an iPod anymore. I mean, you
Yeah.
have an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
But it's kept its moniker, and I assume it still will because people seem to be pretty settled in on that name. But no, I mean, I think the innovation is going to be, the next I don't even know what the next thing will be, but video is certainly here to stay. And that's why I have the cat to kind of wrap
Yeah.
it back around. Is the video part of things is just as important now as the audio part used to be. And so you have to have some type of video component when you send things out, even though you may still have an audio only feed, you'll have a video feed. You're going to multiple, platforms, be it Apple or Amazon or any one of a number aggregators that are out there in the world. And so yeah, it's constantly evolving. I think I've been, as a kid, I was very much a fan of radio, and that's kind of what brought me to all this. And then
Yeah.
I got to work in radio a little bit there, and I haven't, I don't work in radio now per se. I do a podcast, but the fascination with it is still there, and it really does level the playing field to where anyone with some desire, right? It takes a little bit of money, takes a little bit of time, maybe more time than money,
Yeah.
to pull this stuff together, and can do it. And they can do whatever they want, and they can just toss it out there and see what happens. And and then what happens is, at the very least, you have locked away your memories, time in memoriam, at least until you pass, and then you meet not a lot of nice people along the way. And that's, to me, is I mean, what more can you hope for?
Yeah.
I would have never, ever in a million years, when I used to sit in my bedroom and record my fake radio show when I was, like 10 years old or whatever, into my old cassette recorder,
Yeah.
would
I
have
did
ever
that.
thought that
Mhm.
I would be talking to David in Canada, of all places, and talking about all this stuff that's happened. It just, I marvel at it. It's just totally interesting to me. I think, oddly enough, I think podcasting, if you want to talk about the next wave that you brought up,
Yeah.
is going to be more local. So I always thought and radio didn't do this. Radio did so whenever radio was on the wane. I have a short funny story about satellite radio, real
Oh yeah.
quick. So
Yeah, yeah.
satellite radio was taking off, right? So we had XM and we had Sirius. And I contacted the people at XM probably in like 2006, maybe. And I like, we've been doing this show. I'd love to do this show. I'd love to have this show on XM. And the guy called me back. I talked to a programming person at XM Radio at the time, and he calls me back, and we talked for a while. Yeah, I've been doing the show. I got all these shows. We can stitch them together if you want, or however much time you want to fill. We basically at that point we're doing about a half-hour show, and he goes, you know what, you guys are, it's great. You guys are doing this. He goes, when you get on the real radio station, then give me a call. And I thought, you don't have any foresight, right?
Right.
I mean, they're trying to do it, and then radio didn't have any foresight. And so whenever this was at the point of radio waning, so XM was really supposed to replace radio, and it never did, and Sirius, and they combined, obviously. And then I always thought radio was going to become more local, and it never did, and it still hasn't. It's actually more national than it's ever been. And I think podcasting is going to take that niche. I mean, who better for a community to have something than to have one of the neighbors doing a show that talks about what's happening.
Right.
And I think more and more that's going to happen. And it's going to become, kind of like Craigslist and eBay took over classified ads.
Yep,
I
you're
think
right.
podcast is going to take over local media.
Yeah.
If it hasn't already. I mean, maybe there's more to it than I'm even aware of at this point. But to me, that is the direction it can go, because Jim's Pizzeria around the corner, doesn't want to pay national ad rates to be on the radio. And if you have a local community of listeners that listen to your show, just in your town, even, they're going to go to Jim's Pizza. People in, the next province over aren't coming to Jim's Pizza.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that becomes something viable for them and important to them, because you're reaching the people who are in the area and find the area important. And so I think more and more it's going to close in on that. It may not even be, it could, who knows what it'll be, what shape it'll take, but I think that's going to be it. And I think radio, kind of lost the direction. Maybe it'll turn back around and you'll get more of that. But the thing is, you could do a podcast, and I looked into this at one point, but never quite got over the hump on it. But low powered stations, you can have a low powered station without having a license.
Right.
In the United States, at least.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, if you live on a hill, you can broadcast to the community, but you could do it as a podcast as well. And essentially, the broadcast would be a repurposed thing. I don't know. I'm just slinging ideas now here, David.
And the idea too that anyone anywhere can listen to it through an RSS feed. So someone in India can listen to your St. Louis podcast.
Sure.
Like, that's amazing, right?
If they moved away and they still want to have some slight connection to where they grew up or something, then
Smart.
You've got that, right? And it really is communal. It's community. It all kind of comes back together in that regard. And it's a low cost, low barrier to entry for the most part. I mean, everybody can always do more, but as technology has changed over the years, I mean, our show started out on a speakerphone at my house. I would call my friend Miles, and I had an iMac, and I had an external microphone I would set on the speakerphone, and that's how we recorded it. It picked up his voice from the speaker. It picked up my voice in the room, and then we recorded it straight to digital back in those days, which was, not the easiest of tasks for any kind of media. And that was how it started. And we did that for several years. And then eventually Skype came along, and I did Skype recordings, and then now Zoom. I mean, there's been a lot of intermediary technologies in there along the way. And we've, dabbled in each one just because I'm a dabbler, I
Yeah.
suppose. And I love to find out what is going to work and what's going to be, you know, the most interesting to me and the most fun to me. I mean, it's a hobby that's grown, quite a bit over the years, and it's still my hobby. So
All right, Bob, we got to get back to the blue cat because the whole
I
time
almost looped back around to it.
the whole time you're talking, I'm just watching this blue cat with a green shirt on my screen. Can you do this blue cat on different video
Oh,
recordings
anything.
or
I can do it
anything?
on any
Okay.
platform you want. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. So it's not just one platform.
No, no, I
Okay.
do it actually. So yeah, I've done Zoom, I do Riverside, I do all the major carrier, whatever you want to call them, carriers, because it's a local thing. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter. It just becomes my camera.
Yeah.
And we actually do about a year or so ago. So I started to get interested. So all these years, and I had two kids, and so that takes a lot of your time. And so there were times with the show we would do the show, but I wouldn't do much more than the show because I had other responsibilities. And now that my kids are grown up, I said, well, I'm going to be a guest, like I'm a guest on your show,
Yeah.
and that's part of the. We did the Blue Cat as a experiment to animate the show, which worked out pretty well, other than it became a lot of work for me. But then I said, well, I can do this Blue Cat live and be a guest on other people's shows. And so I started doing that here for the last few years during COVID, started kind of during COVID-ish times.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I've been doing the cat live, and then I've also done other things besides our usual weekly show. I do these things where I talk to people, and it's more of an interview style kind of thing. And I interview people as the cat. And amazingly enough, I'll tell you, Dave, I get there's usually I get one of three reactions whenever
Mhm.
I come on as this blue cat persona. I'll give you a little bit of insight on the blue cat here. So
Okay. Oh,
I
everyone lean
get
in, lean in. Yeah.
I get people like yourself who find it incredibly interesting and fascinating that it's happening and are curious as to how it happens, right? And
Yeah.
to me, they're generally enjoying the process that is happening, right? They're talking to a cartoon and they get instant feedback, you know what I mean? And then I get people who don't even say a word about it and just go with it. And we never ever discuss the fact that I'm a cartoon character. And and it's very few, I've had people who literally say, I'm not talking to you.
Really?
Because they're like, I want to see who you are. I don't want to see this cartoon. And I'm like, well, the deal is I'm the cartoon. This is the deal. And I go, if you go look on any website and anything I've ever done, you don't see me, you see this.
Hmm.
So if you did any kind of background, you know that you're not going to see me. You may not have thought about it, but this is the persona. And so then they will literally not record with me. And I'm like, that's fine. I mean, I hold no grudge. I'm surprised because, there needs to be some whimsy in the world.
Yeah.
And I think I'm part of the whimsy.
Yeah.
And so, being this little blue cat that is asking people questions sometimes, because I do interviews with other people, or if I'm on their show and they're interviewing me, it's part of the whimsy. And, be honest, half the time people split it out and they only use the audio. And some
Right.
people use both and some people don't. And, I give them, if we're just doing audio only, I give them something to look at and to know that I'm paying attention because I'm moving around and so forth, as opposed to not having anything. So yeah, I don't know. I had one where I got on with the person who was going to be the host, and we were having a delightful conversation. And then they had a producer, and the producer comes on and says, "We're not doing this." And I go, "Why not?" And then they're like, "No, we're not doing it." And then they basically ended the interview.
Wow.
But the thing was, I was getting I was getting along really good with the host, and I think they were slightly disappointed. But it's that's their producer, so
Wow.
There you go, right? So
All right. So again, so Bob, so people that are listening or watching, and they're like, I love the idea of a persona. I talk to, like, on my author podcast, I have
Mhm.
people who come on who are running under a pen name
Sure.
and cannot be seen on camera.
Right.
The nature of what they've written about is very personal or could get them into some really serious security risk.
Sure.
And they don't want to be on camera, but they're missing out on the opportunity of maybe a video feed or
Mhm.
being on camera. The whole idea of a persona, why is that so important for you? How can we encourage somebody to consider a persona as a podcaster to get them into podcasting?
Sure.
I just love the idea of what you're doing.
Well, so the funny thing is, so so my name's not even Bob, David. I'm gonna be honest with you here, and I'm not divulging anything because I've said it on our show more than once.
Okay.
So this is not any new news necessarily, but I don't say it often unless it comes up in conversation.
Yeah.
So back when I was doing radio, I came up with Bob. Well, actually, I came up with Bob, and Miles, my co-host, came up with my last name, LeMent,
Okay.
and he go, well, I'm gonna be Bob, and he goes, okay, well, we gotta have last names. So we made names for ourselves to be on the radio, as because that's
Yeah.
kind of what you did,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Back then, that was normal kind of operating procedure. Is you would have a persona. And so we each come up with our personas, and we're doing the show and everything. And so then when we made the transition to the podcast, we kept the personas. And so we didn't think twice about it. And now, all these years go by and everything. And I'm like, I'm really glad I have a persona because I do have a regular day job that I work at. And,
Yeah.
every once in a while, you go out into the online world and you encounter things that, that doesn't fit with the day job every once in a while. And
Mhm.
there's, but you're there and you're doing things. And so it kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer. It's not quite
Right.
high stakes like you're talking about with authors and so forth, but
Yeah.
it's nice to have a little bit of a separation of worlds, as it were.
Yeah.
And so I've just kept it up, and I was like, man, I've either lucked out or was just really prescient at the time. I don't know. The other thing is I have children, right? So
Right.
and so growing up with kids, my kids really didn't know about all this until they got a little bit older, but then they knew. I mean, there was no hiding it. I mean, at the time, who has all this rigging in their
Right.
home to do
Yeah.
recording?
What is
If
going on here?
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I'm not a musician, and so they're like, what's all this about? So then it was pretty obvious, and I didn't necessarily hide it. But when you have kids, you kind of got to protect them a little bit because they don't necessarily want their anybody they know to know you're doing something. Because I mean, back then, podcasting was not the hot, cool, hip thing to do.
Right.
Doing a podcast was quite nerdy. It was like ham radio or something. Um, and so with that going on, you don't want to embarrass your children any more than you would normally by encroaching upon their world a little bit, right? So luckily for my kids, podcasting really didn't become more mainstream until they were kind of grown up. But when they were little, I was doing it and nobody wanted to do it. I mean, if you talked about having a podcast, you're pushing your glasses up and I got a
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
on modeling. And, it was not anything that anyone wrote home about. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
now that to me, I think podcasting has totally usurped radio in the media sphere.
Right.
Then now, oh, that's neat. And I think they find it kind of interesting that I've been doing this for a while. I don't know that I could quote him on that, but at least it's not quite as bad as it would have been, perhaps
Yeah.
in a different time time layout or something. So yeah.
Okay. So Bob, I could talk to you for the rest of the week. Just to have time with the blue cat for one, but the rich history and the perspective that I get from talking to you, I think just that's the one thing as new podcasters come into the space, they don't have a complete understanding of where we've come from. And
Right.
today it's almost pretty simple to get a podcast up and running
Sure.
compared to the way that you had to steal an RSS feed and do all this stuff. Today's a lot easier, but I think in the simplicity of starting a show today, we're neglecting to go back in our roots and understand how podcasting has grown
Mhm.
over the years. I'd love for you to kind of talk to a podcaster that's here with us, contemplating starting a show, going, well, when you started, there was 50 podcasts, and now there's all these millions of shows and all
Millions,
this stuff,
yeah.
right? It's what's your encouragement for a brand new person coming into the space who feels a little overwhelmed with the sheer number of podcasts?
Mhm.
What makes a podcast stand out? What makes a podcaster different? You're a great representation, Bob, of everything I'm talking about. But what can we do as a new person coming into the space from somebody who's been it from the beginning?
Well, I think, first thing is always manage expectations, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's a different world than when I started and so forth. And so you have to, I think even now though, you want to do something that you want to do. So don't say how can I think of something that's going to be popular? Or how can I think of something that's
Right.
going to make money or whatever? I mean, those are possibilities if that's your interest, right? But those aren't the norm. The norm is I want to talk about, I made fun of the ham radio model train or something like that. But,
Mhm.
if you love model trains, do a podcast on model trains because you'll have so much fun doing it, number one. And then you're going to take that hobby and that interest and expand upon it. And you want to expand upon it anyway because it's your interest, right? So then essentially it becomes a bit of a perpetual motion machine because you already have the interest. And so now this just becomes another outlet for you to talk about your interest and do the research and do the all the work that goes into putting on a bit of a show, right? And so always think like that. Don't think like, I have to be, a Joe Rogan or anybody else. You know what I mean? Because that's a whole different ball game in regards to that. They all use the same name, podcasting, but there's people and there's money and there's all this stuff. Whereas if you're just wanting to do something, maybe you just want to do something on plays, or you just want to do something for your community, stick to that. Stick to your niche. Stick to the thing that interests you the most, and come up with a plan. Right. So whenever we started, I said I want to do this every week, and so we've done a weekly show. But you don't have to, right?
Mhm.
Don't jump in and say I'm going to do this every day, because then by the end of the week you may be like I don't want to do this next week, and so then you kind of you feel like you can't keep it up. So realistically come up with a thing. Maybe you just do it once a month, you know?
Yeah.
And then after you start doing that for a few months, you're like, you know what? I think I could do it every other week. And so it's just like, the funny thing is it's just like diet and exercise where you can't just jump all in to something and go cold turkey on. I'm never going to eat cake again because be eating cake in 2 minutes because all you're going to think about is cake, right? So the same kind of thing. You just have to kind of get into it and see if you like it. Come up with a concept that's going to be something that it's easily built upon so that you don't have to worry about content constantly because you've either got it in your head already, you've got years of content that you've already been exploring that you just haven't got it out of your mouth yet, or it's an interest that you're going to want to explore. And I think that's kind of to me, that's the big things. It is, um, it's just like, in a way, it's just like doing a newsletter. It's just like being on a forum that you're interested in. It's just like all of those things. It's just going to be in an audio or video or both form that you're going to put out to the world and see if anybody else is into that. Because some people are just more adept at presenting than other people.
Mhm.
Or, for my case, I'll tell you right now, is that even though I did some radio work and so forth, doing this over these years, has made me way better than I've ever been at talking off the top of my head.
Hmm.
And you know, that to me is a skill that I wanted to develop but didn't know how to develop, and it's just developed because I like to do this.
Yeah.
And you know, and I would say, if for anybody, if you just do it to develop that skill,
Yeah.
you're going to, it's like, wow, I've done this for you know, a few years, and now when I'm in conversations, I don't worry about it. I don't get stuck. I don't, you know, stop or freeze up. Or in my case, I can talk in front of groups, right? So
Hmm.
hundreds of people I've talked in front of. And it all started from this. Again, when I started this, I mean, getting up in front of a group was not in the cards.
Yeah.
But this has given me confidence so that whenever those opportunities come up, I'm fine. It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
They always say, you know, one of the most, what do you want to call it? The most scary things that people ever do is to talk in front of a crowd.
Hmm.
Not anymore.
No. And yeah, and the blue cat helps, obviously. And
Well, it
again,
helps for this part. Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big
I do
fan.
talk
Yeah.
in front of crowds with myself and other stuff, but yeah, for this side of things, this is the blue cat.
Bob, where do we go to get more blue cat, more Bob,
Oh,
and all that stuff? Come on.
you can go to staticradio.com and at static radio and all the socials. And we do a comedy show. So, you know, who knows what we're going to say sometimes. And I've put a tagline now with the longest running comedy show on the internet. So
There you go.
there
And
you
you
go.
got
I don't know if that's true or not, but no one's told me it's not.
the lawyers haven't come yet, so that's
Yeah.
good. I like it. Bob, thank you so much for doing this. I would love to hold the door open for you. I'll put out like a little bowl of cat food, and you can come back anytime to
Tender
talk
Biddles.
podcasting, right? Oh yeah. Um, and having you on the show makes me purr. So I'm so excited, Bob, to have you on the show. So thank you so much for making time to do this.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Awesome.
me.
Everybody, all the information is always in the show notes. You got to go see Bob. You have to stop whatever you're going to do now, stop and go do this. Go to staticradio.com. Check it out. You're going to love to see what I'm seeing here on the screen. Bob, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Dave.
So